Chapter 375. It was a startling revelation that the first Duke of Tain had been a mage and had a connection with the Archmage Luma. If this was true, then there was one person close to Uther who might know the existence of the fourth underground dungeon floor even better than Pruel. Is it true that the first Duke of Tain was Luma's disciple? Enon, who had suddenly received a visit from Uther, questioned back with a puzzled face. He had been in the midst of grinding herbs he had collected from somewhere. From what I know, all 5 of the Emperor's children were disciples of Luma at that time. Of course, there were almost none who learned fully to the end, but he had no talent but showed aptitude in research. I heard that Luma frequently visited him here. Have you ever seen him? Enon added a handful of herbs into a small dish, furrowing his brow. No, Luma kept my existence a secret. After Luma left, I paid no personal attention to the royal family or nobles, focusing only on my duties. Then the fourth underground dungeon floor might not exist either. If it was in the design, the probability would be higher. Find a reliable mage and take him along with one of the Tain's lineages. If there were Tain's family crest, there might exist a device that only those with the blood connection can open. There is such a device? It was quite a common protective device in the past. Blood doesn't lie after all. Enon answered nonchalantly, but suddenly stopped his nervous grinding of herbs. But if the dungeon was originally for research purposes, and the lowest floor was concealed to such an extent that first Duke of Tain might have been researching something quite prickly. Prickly? Luma was secretly researching how to turn back time, among other things. So why wouldn't another guy do the same? Uther slowly nodded his head. In any case, it seemed right that Duke Tain was Luma's disciple, and if there was a high probability that the fourth floor existed, the item that Duke Tain hid might also be there. I must first find the fourth floor and check the presence of the item, and then look for traces of the first Duke of Tain or Luma. Enon, when I go to find the fourth floor, do you have any thoughts of going as well? Asked in case, Enon sharply opened his eyes and turned his head. Are you thinking of going there, even when your body hasn't fully healed yet? No, it's not that I'll definitely go, but we have to find the fourth floor anyway. If it's necessary to protect the capital, maybe, but I won't do anything dangerous in other places. I'm not a madman like you. Enon bluntly betrayed Uther, then asked with a furrowing face a moment later. More importantly, have you thought about what I told you? Uther immediately knew what he meant. It was about a new method to fully regain his strength, which Enon had told him about during a previous treatment. I was actually going to hear more information and seek advice from the monster experts from Paleta that the commander will meet today. You must come too, so get ready. Monster experts? What's that? I didn't hear about it. Well, that would be the case. In fact, Uther had come here to convey that story, but he first asked about the Duke of Tain and the fourth underground floor. You heard it now, so it's fine. What's fine about that? The conversation ended with a familiar shout. Uther, having received a scolding to speak quickly if he had business, set out with Enon. Kishir, who was waiting in the reception room, found them and stood up with a smile. The assistant, who went to call the pharmacist, hadn't returned for a while, so I was wondering what was going on. Shall we go now? Yes. In the carriage, waiting behind the mansion, only Nathan Zuckerman, holding a small box wrapped in black cloth, was already aboard. He silently nodded to Uther and Enon, who had come with Kishir, but did not move from his position guarding the box. Nobody was unaware that inside the box was a small Pethumet captured from the Great Serene Forest. Since Kishir naturally had Uther sit beside him, Enon sat next to Nathan. Uther could see from the Enon's uncomfortable expression that he truly did not want to be there. You probably already know, but the people we are meeting today are from my territory, Peleta. One runs a small business, and the other is the only mage in the Peleta Knights. They gladly came, showing great interest when I asked for help on this matter. Kishir explained that both were well experienced in dealing with monsters, and there was no worry of secrets leaking. Both were people that Yudhir did not know in his previous life. I didn't know there was a mage in the Peleta Knights. They hardly ever actually do anything. They are a bit different from other mages. As they were talking, the carriage quickly stopped. A small house not far from Baron Wilhelm's mansion was their destination. Ordinary looking soldiers who looked like the Peleta Knights saluted Kishir. Yudhir was newly impressed by the tact with which everything had been thoroughly prepared so as not to draw attention to the visitors from Peleta. You have arrived, my lord. I thought this old neck of mine would fall off waiting. If you can still travel by carriage, then you'll live healthily for another 50 years, Helem. What's the use of living 50 more years? Still, I'm happy to see you in good health, my lord. The one who greeted them inside was an elderly woman dressed in mage robes. Her small body looked even smaller standing in front of the tall Kishir, but the eyes beyond her glasses sparkled no less than a young person's. Her gaze went from Nathan Zuckerman, who was holding the Patumet's cage, to Anon, and finally stopped on Yudhir. Yudhir somehow felt that she was studying his face very closely. But very shouldn't. That guy was up all night doing who knows what, so he overslept today. Grandma, don't say it, just wait a moment. A plaintive shout came from the second floor. Kishir, understanding the situation, nodded and followed the mage to the place she had prepared. When Nathan Zuckerman placed the box containing the monster on the neatly cleared large table and unfolded the cloth, the old mage, who had been watching, suddenly smiled and spoke. Nathan, you seem taller. No one's been bothering you? ... Nathan Zuckerman responded with silence, but the atmosphere momentarily soured. Kishir, who burst into laughter, bowed his head in defense of his adjutant. It seems to you that Nathan is still like his younger self, but now no one dares to do that. To my eyes, my lord, you don't seem much different either. Well, I suppose so. Kishir, who answered briefly, turned to Yudhir and Anon. Helem was originally from the court mage lineage. When I had to leave for Peleta, she was considering her retirement. So I found a good place for her to retire at just the right time. Speaking of retirement, he actually ordered me to work by his side until he died. Who would want to spend the rest of their life in such a cold and damp place? If monsters hadn't appeared here, he would never have called me, Helem retorted, sticking out her tongue. Kishir just laughed and did not refute the statement. Yudhir finally understood Kishir's word that she was a bit different from other mages. If she comes from the court mage lineage, they must have known each other since childhood. He became more curious about her history, which he hadn't seen in his previous life, but Helem was a bit quicker to show curiosity toward Yudhir. Seeing your uniform, you must be the new assistant? Yes, my name is Yudhir Ale. You look more robust than I heard, much healthier than my own grandson. More robust than she'd heard? Where had she heard about him first? Although he had some guesses, it was the unfamiliar praise that made Yudhir more perplexed. Yudhir kept his mouth shut, and Helem chuckled before exchanging a few words with Anon. Anon maintained his usual gruff and brusque demeanor, but Helem did not show any discomfort at his attitude. Rather, a hint of affinity was visible in her face as she said, I have heard that you wanted me to look at that monster. It's ready. Everyone's gaze turned to the cage, now unveiled by Nathan Zuckerman, who had removed several layers of cloth that had been covering the Patumet. Yudhir saw the small Patumet nibbling on vegetables within the magic circle drawn iron bars. It seemed a little plumper than when he'd seen it before leaving the great jungle, although he couldn't be sure if it was just his imagination. That's the monster. It's truly a creature I have never seen before. Helen, having pushed up her magnifying glasses, approached with great interest to examine the monster.